Imagine a future where artificial intelligence, well, it isn't just a tool, is it? It's this huge force, incredibly powerful, already reshaping industries, our lives, maybe even society itself. So you've
Right.
got to ask yourself, as AI gets that big, who actually benefits from all that power? I mean, whose pockets really get lined? Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take a whole stack of sources, dig through them, and pull out the really important stuff just to help you get properly informed fast. Today, we're doing a deep dive into something fascinating and maybe, yeah, a bit concerning, the transformation of OpenAI. We've gathered sources that track its journey, from this idealistic nonprofit start to what looks much more like a heavily investor-driven for-profit company now. So our mission today, let's unpack this big shift, understand the motivations, the structural changes, and really, what does it mean for where AI's future wealth goes? And what about this idea of benefiting humanity? We'll look at the key moments, the arguments in our source material, so you walk away with a hopefully really clear picture of what's at stake. Okay, so to really get what's happening now, we need to rewind a bit. Let's set the stage. Take us back to, 2015, when OpenAI first started. What was the big idea then?
Right. 2015, it was incredibly ambitious, really idealistic, you could say. OpenAI launched as a nonprofit, and they were very clear about positioning themselves as a kind of benevolent alternative.
An alternative to the big players like Google's DeepMind.
Exactly. Their core mission, stated right up front, was developing AI for humanity.
Hmm.
And that wasn't just, a tagline. It was meant to be the guiding principle, a real commitment that AI's power would serve everyone.
And the funding model, that reflected it too, didn't it? It was all philanthropic donations at first.
That's right. No investments looking for big returns, just donations.
The name itself, OpenAI, it just sounds like transparency, public good.
It definitely projected that image.
But was that really sustainable? I mean, AI development is notoriously expensive, right? Hyper-competitive. Did OpenAI truly match what was happening inside from day one, or was it more of an aspiration?
That's a really critical question. The public saw openness, the name screamed it. But our sources do suggest there were internal complexities, and the sheer cost, especially of computing power, was enormous, even back then. Pure philanthropy. Probably wasn't going to cut it long term for the kind of world-leading AI they wanted to build.
Right.
Which leads us to the first big change. But it's important for you, listening, to think about what that initial vision meant. It set expectations, didn't it? This idea that AI's power would be shared, not just hoarded by a few. That's a stark contrast to where things seem to be heading.
Okay, so the idealistic vision meets reality. What happens next?
Well, that vision started to evolve, maybe inevitably, as those development costs really bit. The first major structural pivot came in 2019. That's when they created this hybrid structure.
Hybrid. What does that mean in practice?
Think of it like, a for-profit company was created inside the nonprofit, like a subsidiary. So the for-profit part could raise investment capital, but it was still technically controlled by the original nonprofit board.
Okay, so trying to balance the need for cash with the original mission, how did they sell that to investors?
That's where it got interesting. They brought in this idea of capped returns. Investors could make a lot of money, yes, but only up to a certain limit, specifically 100 times their initial investment.
100 times? That still sounds like a pretty massive return.
Oh, absolutely huge, but technically capped. The idea, or the promise, was that any value generated beyond that 100x cap would flow back to the nonprofit.
Back to humanity, supposedly.
Back to humanity, exactly. It was like this pressure release valve ensuring profits eventually recirculated.
It sounds like a clever workaround on paper.
Hmm.
A way to get funding without totally selling out the original idea.
It seemed like a clever compromise at the time, but the sources we looked at detail another shift, a much bigger one, that started to put real pressure on that cap. Investor influence grew, and there's specific mention of a huge SoftBank deal, $40 billion, really pushing things.
40 billion, wow, okay.
Yeah, and that pressure seems to have steered OpenAI towards becoming something different again, a Delaware Public Benefit Corporation, a PBC.
PBC, Public Benefit Corporation, that sounds good, right? Benefit?
Sounds reassuring. A PBC is a for-profit structure, but it's legally supposed to balance shareholder profits with achieving some kind of specific public benefit.
Okay.
But, and this is a big but, how that benefit part is actually enforced. Well, that's often where the promise meets a less rosy reality.
And this is the really critical bit for their original mission, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's the key difference with this new PBC structure compared to the capped return model?
The profit cap, it's gone.
Gone. Just like that. No 100x limit anymore.
Our sources indicate there are no meaningful profit caps in this new structure.
Mhm.
That escape valve for humanity we mentioned seems to have vanished.
Wow. Okay, so what does that mean for the whole benefit humanities mission? And who's actually in charge now?
That's exactly the question. Who holds the reins? See, originally, under the nonprofit structure, the board had a fiduciary duty to humanity.
Meaning their legal obligation was to the public good, not just investors.
Precisely. That was the bedrock promise. Their decisions were supposed to prioritize broad benefit.
But things have clearly shifted, haven't they? I mean, everyone remembers the whole drama around Sam Altman's firing and then quick reinstatement in 2023.
Oh, absolutely. That episode really threw the power dynamics into the spotlight.
It felt like the employees, and crucially Microsoft, a major investor, flexed their muscles. They backed Altman, and it seemed to solidify his power, and by extension, the influence of the investors, maybe over the original nonprofit board's intentions. It felt like a power struggle, and the money side won.
That's a very plausible reading of those events, yes. And it connects directly to the implications of this new PBC structure. Because under this setup, the director's primary legal duty shifts. It's now owed mainly to the shareholders.
Not to humanity.
Not primarily, no. It fundamentally changes who they're accountable to. The focus inevitably tilts towards maximizing returns for investors.
But wait, if it's a public benefit corporation, isn't there some oversight? Don't states like Delaware or California step in to make sure they actually deliver that public benefit?
Well, the sources raise concerns there too. Sued attorneys general do technically have the power to oversee PBCs, to sue if the public benefit mission is ignored.
Okay, so there is some mechanism.
In theory, yes. But the sources suggest that in practice it's very rare. Attorneys general tend to focus more on consumer protection, maybe antitrust stuff.
Huh.
Enforcing the public benefit clause just hasn't been a major priority historically. So there's this gap, you see, a gap between the promise of the PBC structure and the reality of its enforcement.
Leaving the public with not much recourse if profit simply trumps benefit.
Essentially, yes. It marks a fundamental reorientation away from that original mission.
Okay, let's follow the money then, because that's where the scale of this really hits home for everyone. Remember, the initial pitch, leaders at OpenAI talked about giving the vast majority of AI's economic value back to humanity. That was the grand promise.
And the contrast now, based on this restructuring, is, well, it's stark. We're potentially talking about trillions of dollars in future value from AI. Trillions.
Trillions.
Value that, under the original concept, was supposed to benefit the public, could now flow primarily to private investors. It's a massive potential redirection of wealth. Think about what even a fraction of that could do for societal challenges if it were directed towards public good as first imagined.
And we know who the big players are standing to gain here. Microsoft, obviously. SoftBank, as you mentioned. Other private investors, too?
Exactly. They are positioned to capture potentially unprecedented wealth from the AI revolution. Wealth that was, at least initially, framed as a shared human inheritance.
It's not surprising, then, that some critics are using incredibly strong language.
No, it isn't. The source material highlights critics calling this whole shift, and I quote, the greatest theft in human history.
Wow. The greatest theft. That's powerful.
It's a strong claim, yes. But it reflects the argument that humanity's stake, its share in the benefits of AI, has been effectively erased. Perhaps quietly, but decisively. It forces a huge question about what AI is for and who really owns its future.
That accusation really crystallizes the core tension here, doesn't it? This fundamental conflict.
Yeah.
Is AI a public good, something for everyone, or is it primarily an engine for private profit?
Exactly. And OpenAI is a kind of a microcosm of this much bigger debate we're having about technology, about ownership, about societal benefits.
So stepping back, looking at the bigger picture, these public benefit corporations, PBCs, they sound good.
They do. The name is appealing. It suggests a commitment beyond just the bottom line. But, as our source points out, the actual enforcement of that benefit aspect seems, well, weak is perhaps putting it mildly. The fact that shareholders themselves have apparently never sued to enforce the public benefit part of a PBC charter tells you a lot about where the real power and priorities tend to lie.
So at the end of the day, it seems like the legal structure, whether it's a nonprofit, a cap profit, or a PBC, maybe matters less than we think.
That's a compelling point raised in the analysis.
It seems to come down more to the incentives, the culture, maybe even the personalities of the leaders involved.
Right, the human element. Who is actually making the decisions, and what truly motivates them? That seems to be the crucial factor guiding this incredibly powerful technology.
Which makes you think about other emerging technologies too, doesn't it? Beyond AI.
Absolutely. How do we structure things? How do we create incentives to ensure that massive technological breakthroughs genuinely benefit society broadly and aren't just captured by a few? It's a huge challenge.
Okay, so let's try to quickly recap the core argument we've pulled from the sources today. Essentially, OpenAI's restructuring represents a significant shift, moving its focus away from that initial grand vision of benefiting humanity
Hmm.
and much more towards maximizing profit for its investors. And this shift seems to be happening without strong regulatory checks or much public input on decisions that could literally reshape the future distribution of wealth generated by AI.
That sums up the central concern highlighted in the material, yes.
So, as AI keeps evolving, keeps changing our world in ways we're only beginning to grasp, it leaves us with a really provocative thought to chew on. How much of AI's immense value do we as humanity actually think we're entitled to? Is it something we should have a collective stake in? And if so, what kind of mechanisms should we even be thinking about to secure some share of that for the common good? What really stands out to you about who gets to control the future of AI?